Adam Taxon here with a real hero, Simon Deng, from South Sudan, who has an incredible life story, which we may get to later. But he's agreed to talk with me and enlighten me and the audience about recent events in one of the world's newest countries, if not the newest country, South Sudan. Simon, thanks for being with me today. We have a lot to catch up on. Most people know nothing about South Sudan, including the events that have been occurring in just the last week or so. So thank you for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thank you for having me this morning.
I am coming at this from a place of complete ignorance, and I guess most of the audience is in the same place. Let's just say South Sudan doesn't get the world's attention in the way that, say, Israel does. People really pay no attention to it at all, but there's a lot going on. There's been a civil war on and off for years in Sudan, and you, I have to add, are a former slave in Sudan who walked 300 miles to freedom, and you've become a human rights activist. So could you take a minute or two and just fill those of us who know absolutely nothing about what's going on, about what is going on?
Well, as you mentioned, that most of the times when it comes to the continents of Africa, unfortunately, few in the West have no clue, and that should not be considered as an ignorance or as an ignoring. Well, why should somebody who live in freedoms have everything in his position, our positions, to be concerned about some 100,000 miles away from him or from her? And that is absolutely is a human nature to judge things. Yes, South Sudan has been in a conflict with the North for very, very long times, where 3.5 million South Sudanese perished in the hands of the war between the North and the South, which is started in 1955. Some people will say that in 1956, but it started in 1955. That being said, after a long time, it was the United States of America that got involved by bringing peace and stability to that region in Sudan, where the peace agreement was signed in Nairobi in 2005. It was an American behind that peace agreement after the U.S. Congress and the Senate signed the Sudan Peace Act, signed into law by the President George W. Bush. And then, within that peace agreement in position, people in South Sudan felt that peace has come to them. And indeed, for a very short time, everybody returned back to their villages, which has been devastated by the war for all those years. And then we did have a system of governance in Juba, the capital of Southern Sudan now, whereby that the Southern Sudanese went and voted for secession from the North. And in 2011, the Southern Sudan became a newest nation, independent sovereignty. Unfortunately, the ruling party, the SPLM, which controls all the aspects of life in the country, they themselves could not put themselves and their acts together within their party. And then they create a problem to the people of Southern Sudan, people who felt that peace has come. Given that there is nothing there for them, at least there is peace and stability. And the fighting took place in Juba with some military unit which loyal to the presidential guard, not the whole entire Southern Sudanese army. We have to make it very clear to the audience. And that war went to the point that because of there are too many people killed in Juba, the capitals, and others got upset with that and then got involved on the tribal line. Very unfortunately, we have a society which is usually loyal to the tribes more than the nations. And now, when things are coming down to the tribal line, it is very dangerous.
Right.
Very, very dangerous.
Now, that's not different from a lot of Africa, where basically European colonists created somewhat arbitrary borders, and you go throughout Africa, and tribes, even in South Africa, are the primary loyalty as opposed to the nation itself, it seems to me, with a few exceptions. Let me ask you a question just to make the conflict clear. Is this, and I sort of know the answer here, is this an example of Muslims against non-Muslims to a large degree?
No.
It's not?
No.
Okay.
It is the Southern Sudanese pure, because in Southern Sudan they don't have this tension between these religions and that religion. Even sometimes you will be surprised, you will find one house there is a Muslims there and there are a few Christians there, although that the predominant society of Southern Sudanese are Christians. But when it comes to religions, to them that is not a matter always. It is between you and what you believe in.
And
that being said, this is completely a political crisis. It is a power struggle within the party. And this problem has been there, raising up. Everybody was watching when the whole thing started boiling and boiling before it got exploded. And now it is exploded. And guess what happened? Southern Sudan lost almost 30,000 innocent lives for nothing. 1 million refugees at the moment we're speaking in one region, the region of Upper Niles, composed with three states, Jungle states, and Unity State and Upper Nile State. 1 million. For God's sakes, now we just got out from being refugees. We just got out from civil war for so long. And then in no time, even not 3 years old, we are back to square one to become a refugee. That itself, this is what is happening in Southern Sudan. One region in Upper Nile in Southern Sudan today, it is a disaster area. At the moment we're speaking, there are human bodies still rotted, not buried by anyone. There are peoples that now laying on the roads.
Here,
that's to tell you that the magnitudes and of the disaster in Southern Sudan, in which that everybody should be outraged.
now here's my question. Okay, I am outraged, as I've been by many events in Africa through the decades. But here is the question. What is the average American who may be concerned, whether a Christian, whether a Jew, whether an atheist, what are we supposed to do? I mean, is there something we can put political pressure on? What is it we're supposed to do? I know that the UN keeps a lot of Ugandan troops there, but what can the average person do about this? Outrageous as it may be.
We have to be outraged and angry to our government. It is we, the United States government, with the help of the United States taxpayer, went and brought peace to that country. It is we, the United States, contributed to that new nation more than anybody on earth. We have to be outraged. Why our money being poured in the nations at the time that the government himself now doing what they're doing to their own citizens? Somebody have to ask questions. Somebody have to be held accountable. Somebody have to say, wait a minute, you cannot do that to yourself. For God's sake, for the first time ever, a nation from the independence to the civil war, that is a record. It never happened in the world, and now it's happening in Southern Sudan.
Oh, it happened to Israel, that's for sure. Like the countries.
We the ones who helped these Southern Sudanese. We the one who have sympathy. We the one who brought even most of them as refugees in this country, known to us today as lost boys and lost girls. And now they are American citizens contributed to this nation. We have to be outraged. We have to be outraged because it is our legacy now being trashed.
How has President Obama, who obviously has more of a connection to Africa than any previous president, how has he performed on this issue? And then after that, you can tell me what congressmen and senators have really stood out and are trying to help.
You know, I know President Obama, and believe it or not, most people will tell you, frankly speaking, especially the advocates who was working to bring peace to that country, those who were lobbying for the issue of Sudan and Southern Sudan in general, they are disappointed of the president of lack of to be on the point. Today, the President of the United States, even his position was not very clear. He's not even our age. As I said before, Southern Sudan, it is an American baby. It is the United States government that created that nation. We have to put it very clear. People of Southern Sudan today are very proud of the contribution of Americans by having peace and bringing peace to that country. Then why Americans have to walk away from them?
I understand. Have any members of Congress been particularly helpful to date?
Oh, no. We have people. I don't want to mention the list, but I will give you, just on the top of my head, people like Congressman Frank Wolf, as being on the top, has written letters to the president. And believe it or not, anybody can go to him and he will tell you on the records.
That's Frank Wolf, Republican congressman from Virginia, I believe?
Absolutely, yes.
Anyone else that deserves particular mention? I know Sam Brownback is no longer in the Senate, but...
Sam Brownback is a friend of Southern Sudan, but he's no longer there. And believe it or not, he will tell you exactly what I just said.
And how about any Democrats that have been particularly helpful?
We have people of Democrat, and unfortunately we lost a hero on this issue, congressman from New Jersey, who passed away 2 years ago. Unfortunately, Southern Sudan lost a friend, and he would be today, if he would be alive, he would be our age.
Is that?
He would be our age of what is happening today.
Is that Adler, or are you talking about Senator Lautenberg?
No, he's a congressman from Newark. A congressman
from Newark.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know who you're talking about off the top of my head. Has the Congressional Black Caucus taken this?
Don Payne.
Don Payne, yes, of the Congressional Black Caucus. Was Alan West helpful at all during the 2 years he was in Congress as a black Republican who's very conservative? Did he pay any particular attention to this?
I know the congressman, the former congressman West, but he was not involved because he himself was not familiar to the depth to his knowledge, because he was a military person. He was engaged on other things. Yes.
Interesting. I would have thought he would have taken the lead. Now I have a question. Is your ethnic background Dinka, and is that the same? I'm just trying to make it.
I'm a Shuluk.
Shuluk. Was Manute Bol a Dinka? Was he South Sudanese? Because that's the first Sudanese person a lot of people think of. The late basketball player Manute Bol, who played for the Philadelphia 76ers and Washington Bullets, among other teams.
Yeah, Manute Bol, he's from the Denka ethnic group, and he was a dear friend of mine, and we lost a hero of freedom, the man to I and him work side by side to get American involved. I and him walked miles and in the snow here in the UNs to Washington D.C. In everything I and him we have done a lot, and it was a big loss to the people of Southern Sudan. He's from Denka ethnic group, but sometime Manute will tell you that he doesn't believe in tribalism's affiliation, because he's a Southern Sudanese, and indeed he's a Southern Sudanese.
Oh, you know what? I don't follow the NBA that closely, but isn't there another player with the same last name as you? Luol Deng, I think he's on the Chicago Bulls, last I checked. Is he Sudanese?
Yes, we did have another, the native of Southern Sudan's, Luol Deng. He was with Chicago Bulls. I think now he is not longer there. He probably being traded there is a new team which I don't get.
New Orleans Pelicans, is it? That's the newest team.
It's not New Orleans.
Charlotte Bobcats. I don't know.
I think Cleveland, Ohio, I guess.
Cleveland Cavaliers. Yeah. Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I gotta catch up on my NBA. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to just talk a little bit about your life, because you have such an incredible story. You were a slave in northern Sudan, and you walked 300 miles to freedom. I know you are a very humble person, but could you share your life story a little bit with the audience here?
Well, my life story is not different from any Southern Sudanese life story. As I mentioned before, that we have Americans help Southern Sudan's, and even brought here groups of children who happen to be lost boys and lost girls of Sudan. Their life is similar, and this is the life of most of the Southern Sudanese who happen to be lucky to come out from what peoples, and that was the title given by one of the Canadian television, Children of Darkness. These are South Sudanese kids, forgotten peoples, children of war, and you name it. So what happened to me, it happened to most of the kids in Southern Sudan. And when people talk about is slavery, and for the first thing that anybody will hear that word of slavery, that he or she have to assume that I have to read Bibles or go to pick up the books in the library to know about the slave. But talking to you as a living proof of slavery, the pain that a person that happened to be slaves and people read in the books, I know it. I have it. I've been there. I have all the scars in me, in what happened to me, and to being demonized and as a child, and being victimized, and being in a position not to say no to anything. So slavery is an evil which has been abolished by the whole world. But people forgot that slavery was still exists, and it still exists in two countries of Africa. One is the country of Sudan. Two is the country of Mauritania.
Yeah, I've heard about.
So those two countries that I mentioned, even though that is slavery, that it doesn't come in the same form of what the actual slavery usually takes place. Slavery still exists in those two countries, and it still exists up to today.
You know what? It just occurred to me. It's January 31st, and it is Black History Month starting tomorrow. Maybe you could give a challenge to our audience to study or learn a few different resources, a message for Black History Month, which starts tomorrow. I didn't even think about that when I set up this interview. And maybe you could tell us, people, something to do, Black and non-Black Americans, something to do, and also some resources, some reading, including your website. Maybe you could give us all that information on the eve of Black History Month.
Well, it is good that you mentioned that, and believe it or not, when I came to this country, and then the first place that I did my residency, it was in New York, where I am now. And guess what? I was in Harlem, in which when I talk about what happened to my peoples and what happened to me as a slave, the answer I used to get, I was even shocked to be told that, oh, well, okay, we're still being a slave here. And I find it very difficult. So when it comes to the Black History Month, yes, sometimes people use the history as just for the sake of, throwing out the words, but the majority of them don't mean it as that we should not forget what happened, and if we should not forget, then we should not tolerate things like that to happen again. But when it comes to do that, few cannot, they don't mind, and then they said, okay, you being a slave, so what? Slavery going on, and the vast majority, and especially from when we talk about the blacks with the connection of what is happening in Africa, few are familiar and few committed to me, but the vast majority doesn't mind at all.
Huh? That's sad. Very sad.
Yeah, very sad. Very sad. Very sad.
Because we will hear a lot about slavery in the next month in particular, but probably not about any slavery that's going on today in Africa, and I guess South Sudan and Mauritania.
And even as we assume that any person should be outraged of what is happening to black, especially when it comes to the slavery, should be the African American in this country. But you will find the vast majority doesn't, care.
Yeah,
yes, few are indeed in the concerns and so on. But they should be the one to be outraged and so on. Because especially when we talk about the slavery in Sudan, in particular, which I can speak with authority, when everybody realized that the slavery has been, done by the Arabs against the Africans, and then some of them just walk away, because if it is done by the Arab and not by the white people, then why should we care? I think that's what my conclusion to that is all about.
Yeah, and in defense of a lot of African Americans, they simply don't know. If after they if any of them listen to this, like any white Americans or whoever listens to this, they will know. But I'm afraid a lot of the people just don't know, and that's the reality.
Because most of them don't know, because they always assume that the slavery was done by the Europeans, and it is true. The slavery with that magnitude was in the hand of the Europeans, but people always do forget that the slavery started by the Arabs.
Right.
I was not enslaved by the European. I was enslaved by the Arabs.
Yeah.
Anybody who being enslaved in Sudan was not by the European, was by the Arabs. Anybody being enslaved in Mauritania was not by the European, by the Arabs.
Right.
We have to make it very clear. But sometimes people just turn a blind eye. Okay, you are angry with the European, then why we shifted the argument to the Arabs? But the Arabs are the one doing it. They are the one who started before the European.
My understanding is also there were Africans enslaving other Africans, just like in every place. It's in the Bible. We read about slavery in the Bible just last week. Obviously, it's a different in the Jewish Torah. Slavery is something that has really been in all societies throughout history. In fact, I believe it was Dinesh D'Souza in one of his books says the only thing that's unique about Europe is the abolition of slavery.
That's true. As we always discuss this issue of demonization, because slavery is that exactly is. You demonize another human being not to be seen as like you, and that's what the slavery is all about. When I was being kept as a slave, I was not allowed to interact and to play to the kids that in my age. The kids in my age themselves, they will come and beat me up just for fun, and nobody can tell them no. I have to wait for anybody to have to eat, and if there is left over, then that's my food. Like I was being considered not a human being. Period.
Well, that's actually a little different from what we read about in the Torah last week, because it's often said it's said about the Torah reading we had last week in Exodus that if you acquire a slave, you acquire a master. Often the masters were forced to treat the slaves even better than themselves. If there was one thing to eat, it was to go to the slave. Obviously, the Torah discourages slavery, but some people have the slave mentality, and if they wanted to be a slave after 7 years, they had to have something put in their ear. It was discouraged, but it's something that's been around for a long time, and I don't mean to digress from your story. Finally, and Simon, I'm so appreciative of the time you've had. Can you give specific resources for people who want to know more about you, about the situation in South Sudan, and about the situation in slavery, whether for Black History Month or otherwise? If they want to learn more, where should they go?
Well, I don't want to sense anybody in one particular place, because sometimes we are living in a society, in the world, which supposedly have to integrate and came together. We are not living in the world of 100 years ago or 50 years ago. The world that we are in today, we're talking about the global economy, global environment, in which that we're supposed to be talking about the global humanity in itself. Whereby that when a child being victimized in far away, we should not turn a blind eye. When 30,000 people die in one month in Southern Sudan, then people should have to be our age. When you have people are now being on the streets, rot as dead bodies, and nobody buried them because there is nobody there. People have to be our age, because these are people, human beings look like you and me. Unfortunately, he or she happened to be in a wrong place, in a wrong country, but they are human beings. Why should they go and be victimized the way it is? This life, we're supposed to enjoy it until the time that which Almighty God has created us to be on this earth. So people have to be open-minded, and the mediator is there. It is not something that if you go anything and go for Southern Sudan, then you will find you all incredible. So I don't want to say that go to this organization, because I don't believe in just an organization which always the focus and the vision must be in one subject and that subject only. So the people have to read, because media is not involved because American people are not involved. But again, let's come back to this issue again. We should be outraged of what is happening in Southern Sudan, and Americans should be outraged. American was the one funded that country. It's an American taxpayer going to that country. Then we have to ask somebody in the Washington, why these things happen on our watch?
And if people want to learn more, I assume there will not be much of a South Sudan delegation at the Winter Olympics next week for them to see, but I joke. But what is your website, and what is a book, and there's a famous documentary movie that people can see if they want to learn more about the situation?
Well, the South Sudan is when you come to Olympics, so that's not the issue now.
No, I know, I'm kidding.
Knowing the people whom are now desperate, living in the bush now, hiding, Olympic is not on the top of their list.
No.
Or the surviving, it is on the top of their list. How can they see another day tomorrow? And that is what we have to focus on now. Peace and stability need to be brought to the people of Southern Sudan. American has to get involved. Yes, now we have the ceasefire between the warrior factors, which is being signed in Addis Ababa. Then we have to go and put our muscles behind that cessation of facilities and make sure that it have to be implemented, and make sure that then the cause of this problem need to be ironed out and need to be discussed, so that a child should not go and die when you have in 1 minute 300 children in a boat drowned in the Niles. These are innocent children. And we cannot say, wait a minute, why do they have to die that way?
Yes.
What were the reasons? And this is what I'm talking about. We have to be outraged. And somebody has to specifically have to say something in Washington. Peace and stability have to be brought to these people, because people of Southern Sudan, they suffer more than anybody on earth, as far as I know. People like me was born in war. Our kid was born in war. It is time that we have to see peace.
Yes. Should people watch the documentary movie? I believe it's called The Lost Boys of Sudan.
Yeah, there are so many documentaries about the Lost Boys. So many. It's not one. So many. And there are so many books also about the Lost Boys. It is there. It is there.
Can you name the best one for people to read?
Again, I don't want to be mistaken, because sometimes documentary may not be well equipped like the other one. I will leave it to the others to figure it out themselves.
And do you have a website or a place online for people to learn more, or a Facebook page?
No, I don't. I don't have one now which I can give out. Yes.
Okay. Well, it's easy enough for people to find information by Googling, and they can watch the Lost Boys of Sudan movie.
Absolutely.
And perhaps I will talk to you again as things continue to develop in South Sudan. Simon Deng, I'm so appreciative of your time today.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you.